Welcome back, everybody. I'm Winter, and this is another game of WinterStarcraft. This one's from the recent WCS Spring Championship of 2016. We've got a match, a Zerg versus Protoss, here on Frozen Temple. It's going to be between SortOf and Showtime. In the top left-hand corner, the Zerg player. In the red, it's going to be SortOf. His opponent, in the bottom right, the blue Protoss, Showtime. All right, let's talk a little bit about Zerg versus Protoss before we get too far into things. Nothing too crazy coming out from either player so far. No early pools, no proxy gates, which are the first things to look for. Now, let's talk from the Zerg perspective. We're over on this side of the map. Map like this, pretty open. There's a lot of space to attack into third bases. You can move around between your bases relatively easily. And there aren't too many early attack paths from Protoss that are going to be left unscouted. So, SortOf opting for that hatch first. We'll see if he goes for a 3 hatch before pool, which is relatively common. It's kind of a stylistic choice. Some players will go for the gas pool, and it looks like that's where SortOf is going. Now, going to have access to the speedlings, and then maybe we'll see some Overlord speed, or some Baneling drops or something like that. Right now, the most consistent way to go about things, get your early Zergling speed, make sure you don't take any damage to early Adept Harass or any little pushes like that. And then you transition into things like Zergling drops, into +1 melee attack, into a way to pressure a Protoss's third base, and then eventually overwhelm their army before they can build up the Protoss Death Ball in the mid-game. We're talking about Immortals, we're talking about Archons, and other units of that type. That is just so strong, it's very difficult to deal with when well controlled. And now on the other side of things, we have Showtime, who's actually opting for 2 gateways before going for his Nexus. So giving him the potential here to maybe do a little bit of economic damage. He's walled off on the low ground in order to be able to protect his second base. There's no real risk of Zerglings pressuring this wall. It's very uncommon to see a 12 pull or a 13 pull. If he had done that, and since he did not probe scout, that could have been very damaging, but that's a big risk for SortOf to take, because it's very common to probe scout, and if the probe scout comes in, sees the Zerglings, no damage gets done. So not surprising that SortOf decides to opt for something a little bit more conservative, as Showtime is looking to move out with these Adepts. So now, if SortOf had gone for a 3 hatch before pull, once again, Showtime doesn't have vision. He doesn't know. So it's not like he's tailoring this build specifically to what SortOf is doing. He's just saying, if you're going to do a little bit of an early pressure, I have the Adepts to defend. And if you're going to get really greedy, I have the Adepts to attack. They're very mobile units. They can fly across the map with these shades incredibly quickly, even faster than Zerglings before they get their speed upgrade. So they can come across, and now SortOf he doesn't have his Zergling speed is still a pretty far ways off. He's going to kill off 1, 2 of these drones. 3. That's not a bad take, and he just gets out with the Adepts. The Shade gets him almost instantly to safety before the Zerglings can even think about us around. And we got 2 more Adepts coming out. And there is the more standard transition. Of course, building a Stargate here is possibly the most quickly scouted Stargate he could have built. But that doesn't mean SortOf is going to get any major advantage from seeing this. 4 Adepts coming in. He's going to be able to kill a decent chunk of these Zerglings, but before losing much more than his shields, he will shade away. Some very defensive shading there from Showtime, leaving him with all his Adepts, which means he has the ability to get a third base pretty safely. It's going to take a lot of Zerglings to deal with this. And now you see what he's doing. He's going forward, scouting for Lings, but also shading back defensively just in case a huge plume of Zerglings comes out and gets the surround. So some very smart plays out of Showtime here, really pressuring SortOf into making Zerglings, and we should see that reflected in the worker count. A few drones went down early on. I mean, we're at the point in the game where a Zerg player who went for all these early hatcheries and is going to be making these Zerglings, they're not going to have a massive drone count. Right now, right around this 4 to 5 minute mark, we see whether SortOf is opting for a more economical player, if he's going to really pressure with Zerglings. And we see here, of course, he's adding on more drones, he's got the third base, he's got some creep spread, which means he's investing in the later game with additional queens. And he's got a Baneling Nest on top of that +1 melee attack. So investing in those melee upgrades, everything, a little bit of an interesting opener out of Showtime, an aggressive opener, but the game is kind of evening out in a relatively standard way. As you see, the Zerg player on 3 bases, now with Overlord speed and working towards that +1 melee, very common to be able to deflect early harass and maintain a decent economy. And now the Banelings coming in. A very interesting development. We've seen Banelings become a lot more common in Zerg versus Protoss because of Adepts, because of charge lots, and because specifically of attacks like this. 3 drones going down. So far, he will shade away. Will he cancel? He will. And keep most of his Adepts in the main base. He knows he's going to lose them probably either way. He's trading time. He's trading time, these Adepts for time and for space. And now, it's not just to keep the Zerglings busy, to keep them from mining, but most importantly, these Adepts are buying time for this third base to become established. He has the third, almost done now. He's got his pylons up so he can overcharge. He's got the robos on the way, the customary transition. And there's no way these Lings and Banelings, he had a lot of them. If he just kills the Adepts right off the bat, if Showtime is a little bit careless, then maybe these Zerglings and Banelings come across the map and they pressure the third base. But, in this case, Showtime buying more than enough time. And we see 36 drones to 51 probes. He's done everything he's needed to do. SortOf definitely thrown pretty far off balance. And now Showtime is going to be able to put together a pretty strong defense. But, SortOf recognizing he's not in the greatest economic circumstances, he has to go for the attack. He's got Overlords filled with Queens and filled with Banelings. That's the only way those Queens are going to make it across the map. They're taking an intercontinental journey right now. And we'll see if they can colonize this Protoss base. A Zergling drop into the main. Good start to this attack. There's not that many units down here. The pylons are actually the most major form of defense. There's one overcharge. We're going to need to see a couple more. The Queens pop out. They're going to have a lot of stability here with the transfuses. The drop in the main is not doing very much here. The transfuses might be enough to break through. And we see the first Immortals coming out. Only a couple pylons remain. This attack doing a lot more than I think Showtime was prepared to deal with. Another pylon should be going down in just a couple moments. He's trying to micro Queens forward. On top of these units, the Immortals are barely holding strong. The pylon's still powering. Another Immortal is going to finish. It looks like, despite initial success here, we're going to see SortOf slowly but surely chipped away. Another Photon Overcharge will be used as that Mothership Core has regenerated the energy. And we see 20 probes have gone down, but so have so many Queens, so many Zerglings, and so many Banelings. And most importantly, that third base is still standing, as well as these 2 robotic facilities. We see another attack coming in. It looks like a couple Banelings tried to come in here. But he's back to Monty, and now we see 89 to 61 supply. Another trickle of Zerglings, but it's still 45 probes to 42 drones. He's done a lot of damage, but he has not done enough. And if Showtime is able to maintain this Immortal production, he's getting upgrades, he still has Phoenixes. Is there even a lair? Not one. Of course, you wouldn't usually make more than one, but I was just making a very dramatic point. As he's bleeding out now. SortOf went for that attack. He lunged for Showtime. He tried to go for the throat, but he got himself cut up in the process, and now he's starting to bleed out to these Phoenixes. More Phoenixes being added. I like that from Showtime. He knows that there's not going to be a really major attack he has to deal with. So his best, most cost-effective unit is going to be those Phoenixes, which can be aggressive and defensive. They can keep scouting from being really of any consequence here. They can shut down all these Overlords and Overlord drops. SortOf another angle of Overlord drop getting shut down. There's a single Banling drop coming in. The last gasp here of SortOf. As Showtime has held on, the early attack set him up. It kind of forced SortOf into that position where he was encouraged and almost had no choice in attacking. And Showtime took a lot of damage, but he did not reach a point of critical damage where he couldn't come back from. And by comeback, I mean be in a lead, which he's exploiting right now with these Phoenixes. This is actually too much damage. There needs to be 10, 15, 20 probe kills with these Banelings somehow, but Showtime is more than on top of accidentally triggering his Immortal shields. Oh, oops. But overall, this Baneling drop should do very little. The Phoenix is really compounding the issues that SortOf is having right now. And we're going to see one last attack with Lings, with Banelings, and with Dropper Lords. And will it be enough? I am hard-pressed to say that this will be the killing blow. The Baneling drop comes in, gets shut down. 2 probes go down. Very little consequence there. And oh, Baneling's crashing into Immortals. Of all the choices, that is probably the least effective one. But we see the Queens coming in on the side. Lots of energy here. No transfuses coming out quite yet. The Phoenixes will pick him up. He's got more than enough overcharges right now. And it looks like it's going to be power overwhelming as all the Queens are lifted up and immediately gunned down by the Phoenixes. The trickle of Zerglings, not nearly enough. But I want to talk about that build. Take a second. I like to do this. We'll talk about that build out of Showtime early on. I want to talk about the utility that it had. Let's see if we can ruin your immersion here. But we're going to go back early on to, what was it, about 2 minutes into the game? Something like that. So we'll talk about this early 2 gate. I think this is the most important part. Where SortOf is going for your pretty standard early Zergling speed opener. The beauty of the 2 gate is that he can attack and defend. Having the Adepts means you're not vulnerable to early Zergling floods, and you do have a response to maybe like a Bane Bust or something like that. But at the same time, if SortOf is going to go for the 3 base or something along those lines, then he can get a lot of damage done. You saw him just continue adding on Adepts. It's pretty uncommon to see someone just make 4, 6 Adepts. You'll usually see 2, maybe 4. But adding those extra 2 at the end for 6 put him over the edge, and that's what forced SortOf into an attack. And no Zerg player really wants to attack into a base with 3 overcharges, several Immortals, and 4 or 5 Phoenixes there to support. But SortOf had taken so much damage, and he was forced into so many units that he had to. So Showtime dictating the pace of the game, which is what led eventually to his victory. So pretty interesting build for you Protoss players out there, and something to keep in mind for you Zergs. But thank you guys again for watching. Good luck, have fun, happy Starcrafting, and make sure to hit all those buttons that people always tell you to hit. Give me some feedback in the comments, but good luck, have fun, and I'll see you next time.